So this guy married 6 women, and 4 of them are dead. In 2008, he called 911 screaming that an intruder shot his wife, and that he'd killed the intruder. Both parts were true. He just left out one part. He was the one who hired him. His name is Thomas Randolph. He is 69 years old, and he is serving 60 years to life in a Nevada prison. Her name was Sharon. She was 57. She was a hairdresser, and she met him on a dating site. And the other man who died in that house was Michael Miller. He was 38. He was the handyman. But to understand what happened in that house, you have to go somewhere else first. Another state, another house, and a wife who died 22 years earlier. Clearfield, Utah, November of 1986. A woman named Rebecca Randolph is found in her own home, shot once in the head. Everybody called her Becky. She was his second wife, and her death is first reported as a suicide. And that is where it would have ended. A tragedy, a closed file, a widower. Except 2 years later, a man who used to be his friend started talking to Utah authorities. His name was Eric Tarantino. He used to be Randolph's friend. He'd worked odd jobs for him after he got laid off. And Tarantino testified that one day the questions from his friend got strange. Could he hurt somebody? Could he shoot somebody? Would it give him nightmares? And then Randolph told him what he actually wanted. He wanted Becky dead, and he wanted Tarantino to do it. Prosecutors said the two of them worked through 8 or 9 different versions of it across a whole summer, and most of them were dressed up as an accident. A fall in the bathtub, a hunting accident, and one other option, a burglary. A break-in at his own house, staged. Tarantino's words on the stand years later, quote, "We discussed having a burglary. I was to go in, grab a couple of things, rummage through some drawers. When she came home, shoot her and leave. And what was in it for him? $10,000 out of Becky's life insurance." Tarantino said no, and then the two of them fell out, and Randolph beat him so badly he spent days in a hospital bed. He ran to California. And this is the part I need you to hold on to. Becky was still alive when he left. Becky Randolph died in November of 1986, 1 gunshot wound to the head in her own home. They arrested Thomas Randolph in November of 1988, and the case they built against him rested on Eric Tarantino. And while he sat in that jail waiting for trial, he tried to have Eric Tarantino killed. Before Tarantino could get anywhere near a witness stand, an informant in his own cell tipped off police. A detective picked up the phone pretending to be a hitman, and Randolph made him an offer, $10,000, the same price he had put on his wife. He sent his girlfriend, Wendy Moore, to hand over the down payment, $2,000 in cash, and the signed-over title to his car. She handed it to the detective, and the detective arrested her on the spot. So now he is in jail for allegedly murdering his wife, and for trying to murder the only man who could prove it. He took a deal on that one, pleaded guilty to witness tampering, and in exchange, prosecutors dropped a drug charge against him and dropped the conspiracy charge against his girlfriend. The judge gave him up to 5 years and a $1,000 fine, and he said this: his skirts are not clean. Then, in April of '89, he went on trial for killing Becky. It lasted 2 weeks. The prosecutor put it to the jury as one single question: who shot Becky Randolph? Was it Becky, or was it Tom? And here is what that jury heard from the defense, because you need it, or none of what comes next makes sense. Becky had been struggling with cocaine, with alcohol, and with depression. She had lost a job she'd held for 11 years, and 6 months before she died, she had already attempted suicide once. His own lawyer, John Kane, called it what the defense had called it all along: an obvious suicide. The act of a woman, in his words, seeing her life crumbling around her. On the stand, they asked Thomas Randolph directly whether he killed his wife. He said, "No, I did not." After 4 hours, the jury came back. Not guilty. On the murder, and on a charge of insurance fraud, too. He turned to the jurors who had just freed him, and he said, "Thank you all. You made the right decision." And 13 days after his wife died, he had collected $250,000 in life insurance. Then he went to court and had the whole thing erased. The murder charge, the conviction for witness tampering, expunged, sealed, gone. And then, and I honestly cannot get past this one, he sued 9 Clearfield police investigators and attorneys for $2.7 million for unfair prosecution. A judge threw it out in a settlement. He walked away with $2,500. The city called it a nuisance lawsuit. And outside that Utah courthouse in 1989, Becky's mother stopped and spoke to reporters. Hold on to what she said. She said, "He's guilty, and he's just going to kill somebody else's daughter. So beware." That was 1989. Sharon Causse would not meet Thomas Randolph for another 16 years. And 16 years is a long time. But before we get to her, I owe you the truth about the other two. Between Becky and Sharon, he married 3 more times. 2 more of those wives died, and the reporting cannot even agree on which 2. He was never charged, and I cannot tell you one honest thing about how they died. So they are not in this story. In the summer of 2005, a woman in Las Vegas logged into Match.com, and she met a widower. That is how he was described to her, a widower, which was true. It just wasn't the whole sentence. Her name was Sharon Causse. She had a daughter, Colleen. She worked in a salon. They married in 2007. She was his 6th wife. And for the entire length of that marriage, all of it, Thomas Randolph was also seeing another woman. Her name was Elizabeth. She lived up in Utah. And he suggested something to Elizabeth, that she should take out a life insurance policy. $150,000 for the protection of her daughter, he said. He offered to pay for it, to take care of it, and half of it was payable to him. By 2008, Elizabeth wanted him to choose, her or Sharon. Her words, "It's not going to work anymore for me. He needs to make a decision." And under oath, years later, Elizabeth told a jury what he said back. Quote, "He said he was going to go out and deal with Sharon, so we could be together. Deal with Sharon. That is the closest thing to a motive anybody ever put in a courtroom. And it came out of his own mouth." Meanwhile, the woman he was married to was telling her friends she was worried. One of them worked with her at the salon, and she said she brought up her worries about him every time they talked. And then Sharon told one of those friends what the two of them had been out shopping for, urns. Thomas Randolph had taken his wife shopping for urns. Her friend told the courtroom exactly what she told Sharon at the time. Quote, "I'm her friend, so I'm allowed to tell her she shouldn't be planning her death." By that spring, Sharon had taken his name off the deed to their house. She was angry with him, and she was talking about divorce. And there was more than $300,000 of life insurance on her. In December of 2007, a 38-year-old man arrived in Las Vegas and moved in with his aunt and uncle. His name was Michael Miller. And shortly after he got there, he met Thomas Randolph at a gas station. Miller started doing odd jobs around the Randolph house, and the two of them got close, fast, in a way that people around them noticed. They sold prescription pills together. They drove out into the desert to shoot guns. And they were on the phone constantly. The court's own words for it later. Almost 300 phone calls in the months before. And most of them started with Randolph. And shortly before he died, Michael Miller told his aunt and uncle 2 things. That he was planning to move away from Nevada, and that he and Randolph were about to come into a large sum of money. Thursday, the 8th of May, 2008. Thomas and Sharon Randolph went out for dinner. They were driving to Utah the next day to see his parents, so on the way home they stopped for fuel, about a mile from the house. They pulled up at home at about 8:30 in the evening. Sharon got out and went inside. and she was carrying a doggy bag, leftover lobster and steak. Her husband stayed outside. He pulled the car into the garage, and then, by his own account, he lingered there. About 3 minutes after they got home, a neighbor across the street heard gunshots. The 911 call came in at 8:44, and on that recording, Thomas Randolph is screaming. He is crying. He is grunting. He is trying to give her CPR. And he says, "Oh my God, she don't have a pulse." This is the story he told police that night. Sharon went in ahead of him. When he came in, she was face down in the hallway. He said something moved. He grabbed a handgun out of a nearby room, and he said he came face to face with a masked intruder. He said they fought. He said he shot him. And he said that after the man went down in the garage, he fired 2 more rounds into his head. And only then, he said, did he recognize him. It was Michael Miller, his handyman, his friend, a man he had been looking at jet skis with a few hours earlier. Sharon Randolph had been shot once in the head. Michael Miller had been shot 5 times. 2 of those were to the head. Now, detectives are standing in that house listening to a grieving husband, and almost immediately, the house starts disagreeing with him. Start with the clock. They got home at about 8:30. The neighbor heard shots 3 minutes later. The 911 call is at 8:44. But Randolph said the whole thing, the entry, the struggle, the shooting, took 2 or 3 minutes. So where did the other 10 go? Then the wounds. Police said the shots Miller took could only have been fired from above, at a man who was already on the ground. Then the hallway. He said he shot a man standing up, right there. There was no blood in it. And then they picked up the mask. Not one bullet hole in it. Not a trace of blood on it. On a man who had been shot twice in the head. Which means whatever else happened in that house, Michael Miller was not wearing it when he was shot. And lying right next to that mask was a plastic bag. Inside it, some of Miller's clothes, Sharon's jewelry, and the keys to the house. A burglar who packed a getaway bag, and then left it on the floor next to himself. And one more thing never added up. Miller knew they were leaving for Utah the next morning. That house was about to be empty for days, so why break in on the one night they were home? A week after the killings, detectives took Thomas Randolph back to the house with a camera and asked him to walk them through it. On the 911 call, this man had been screaming. On this video, he is calm, businesslike. He describes the struggle like this, quote, "He kind of rushed up on me a little bit, and that's when I just pushed him. Boom, boom, boom." He is vague about the weapon. "I don't remember if I seen the handle in his sweatshirt or if I seen the handle in his pants, but he was doing something, going for something." And when the detectives pressed him on the details, where people were standing, what happened when, he gave them this. "I haven't shot that many people, that I can remember these details that good." That is a direct quote from a man standing in his own hallway explaining 2 bodies. And there was one more contradiction. He told a detective he never heard the gunshot because he was hard of hearing and the radio in his car was up. That is not what he told the 911 operator. In January of 2009, they went to arrest him, and they found him living back in Clearfield, Utah, the same town where Becky died. 22 years later, he had gone home. And at the extradition hearing, the judge on the bench was Rodney Page, the same judge who had handled his murder case back in '89. Randolph looked up at him and said, "Nice to see you. I'm sorry, I didn't send you a Christmas card." And about the new charge, he said it was the same allegation as last time, and it's going to have the same result. Then came 8 years of motions and hearings, and he spent every one of them in a cell, held without bail in the Clark County Jail since early 2009. He did not see a jury until June of 2017, and then prosecutors did something that would undo the whole thing. They told the jury about Becky, about Utah, about the $10,000 he had offered an old friend to help kill his second wife. Eric Tarantino came back and told it again, 31 years after the first time. On the 28th of June, After about 9 hours across 2 days, that jury convicted him on all of it. And a week later, on the 5th of July, they came back a second time and voted to sentence him to death. Once for Sharon, once for Michael. Outside, Sharon's daughter Colleen said, "I feel that's really what he deserves. He's a monster. He's one evil, evil monster. And it's been way too long, and it's hurt every day." And Eric Tarantino, the man who had been beaten and hunted and put on a stand twice, said this: "Until the day they find him dead in his cell, or they stick a needle in him, I sleep with a gun at my side." And then, at the end of 2020, the Supreme Court of Nevada threw the entire thing out, unanimously. Not because he was innocent, because of what that jury had been allowed to hear. There is a rule, in Nevada and just about everywhere else. A jury is not allowed to hear about the other bad things you have supposedly done, because juries convict people for being the kind of person who would. And the court found the state had gone far past what it was allowed. The jury heard Randolph beat Tarantino half to death. They heard police put a gun to his girlfriend's head. They heard a detective say he ran with criminals, none of which had anything to do with a house in Las Vegas in 2008. And here is the sentence in that ruling that I cannot stop thinking about. At oral argument, the court said, "The state equivocated about whether it could have won without the dead second wife. The people prosecuting him were not sure they could convict him without telling the jury about Becky." The court called that record complex and lengthy, 8 years of it, and they sent every page back to be done again. So in August of 2023, they did it all over. Same defendant, new jury. And this time, nobody was allowed to mention Becky at all. This time, they were not asking for the death penalty either. He was 68 now. Prosecutors said it was because of his age. His lawyer opened with one line: "This case really is about perspective." Their argument: the burglary was real and Michael Miller planned it alone. That Randolph came home, found his wife dead, and shot the man who did it out of fear, not to silence him. The prosecutor opened with a different line. Quote, "When the defendant recounts what happens, he is the hero of his own story." And at the end, he told them this: "It's a house of cards, and it's literally collapsing. Every time you start to fact-check him, it's a problem." The jury was out a little over 4 hours. On the 24th of August, they came back. Guilty. On every single count. 2 juries, 15 years apart, working from completely different evidence, same answer. On the 4th of April, 2024, Thomas Randolph stood up in front of Judge Tiara Jones and talked for about 15 minutes. He talked about how wonderful Sharon is, present tense. He talked about his health and about dementia, and he thanked the prosecutors for not asking to execute him. And he said, "I didn't kill Sharon. I have nothing to do with this." Judge Jones stacked every count, the 2 murders, the conspiracy, the gun charges on top of them, one after the other after the other. 60 years to life. He is 69. He told the court he intends to appeal, but as of today, no appeal court has ruled on that conviction at all. And that is the part of this that I would take out if I could. Everything a person would have needed to protect herself existed. It was just filed somewhere she could never look. So the question underneath this whole case is a genuinely hard one. Should a jury be told that 2 of your previous wives are dead? Or does that just convict you of being unlucky? If any of this got to you, tell me in the comments. And be careful who you trust. And take care of yourself. Everything here comes from public court records and news reporting. The images are illustrations, not footage. Some drawn from real photographs. Others are best guess at people no camera ever caught. The facts are not a guess. All of it is true.